Welcome to the Jack and Cole podcast, episode 18. Thanks for joining us. My name is Cole, and joined with me is my fabulous co host, Jack, better known as Goblin Ringleader. How's it going?
It's going good. I got the bed head, and we got some amazing spoilers. It's gonna be a good day.
Yes, this is a pretty straightforward episode on our end. We're just going to go through some Tarkir Dragonstorm spoilers as they are fresh off the press. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get right into it and have some fun with these spoilers. So, let's start with the legendary dragons. I think that we just kind of agreed that that's a good place to start. And what better place to start than this Abzan fella right here? Betor, kin to all. He is 2 white, black, green for a 5/7 legendary spirit dragon, legendary creature spirit dragon with flying. And he says at the beginning of your end step, if creatures you control have total toughness 10 or greater, draw a card. Then, if creatures you control have total toughness 20 or greater, untap each creature you control. Then, if creatures you control have total toughness 40 or greater, each opponent loses half their life rounded up. Jack, how are we feeling?
This card's really busted. You just need three other toughness on the field when you play this card, and for them not to actually have a hard removal spell because it's got 7 toughness. It's not gonna die to just like a disfigure style effect. I think like the biggest that a disfigure gets in standard right now is like a -6/-6, and that's draft chaff. Like the only thing that could really tag it is like a ride's end, but it has to be tapped. Like as long as they don't have a go for the throat, and you have three other toughness on the board, you go to the end step and instantly draw a card. And in an Absan deck where you're playing like baby siege rhino and you're like just like dumping out over like under costed over statted threats, like I could see you getting to 20 power pretty easily, 20 toughness pretty easily. 40 though, I don't know if that's gonna happen in standard.
Yeah, I think this is a good card, and I think it might suffer from power creep, where it's like on its face, it looks like a powerful card, but go for the throat, being able to kill it before you get your value might hurt it. Leyline Binding also does that. So it remains to be seen. My guess is that this card is powerful, and it does not see a ton of play just because there are a lot of good options in this very lengthy standard format that we have. But I like Beator. Let's. I think it's cautiously optimistic about him.
One thing I want to say real quick is that all these dragons are spirits, so there might be a resurgence of spirits.
That's a good point. So something to keep in mind for sure. If random spirit synergies comes around, just keep in mind that these are spirits as well. Okay, what does Shiko Paragon of the Way do?
So Shiko is 5 mana for a 4/5 with flying and vigilance, the Jeskai Spirit Dragon. When it enters, you exile target non-land card with its mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. Copy it, then you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So basically, it gives any permanent that's CMC 3 or less in non-land in your graveyard flashback, but you can do it for free. And if it's a permanent, instead you get a token. This is going to be kind of interesting. I thought that these creation effects were they making tokens like Tigum, for example, which we'll talk about in later. I thought they were doubled if you have like a doubling season, but shout out to YouTube comments. They actually taught me today that if a token is created on the stack, it's not created like in play, and so it doesn't trigger doubling season. I could be wrong. If YouTube comments drops the comment below correcting other YouTube comments, that would be awesome. But
Hmm.
for me, from what I've been informed, this token creation on the stack doesn't trigger doubling season style effects. However, it does just
Mm.
create tokens. So if you can like populate or like do something else like that, you can still make this really good. But it's not as inherently busted as I was thinking initially using the Elspeth we'll talk about later or just doubling season.
That's a very interesting ruling, and if it does indeed end up being that you can like have multiple tokens, then I think it'll be a better, even bigger boon for this card with the Elspeth Planeswalker we're going to talk about in a minute. I just think this card is honestly good, straight up. Even if it ends up being the case that like you can't doubling season the tokens, which I honestly don't even know. So now that you brought it up, it's very possible it could go either way. So please, yes, if anyone is a judge or knows a little bit of backstory about this, please let us know in the comments so we can clarify. As is though, 5 mana 4/5 Flagellance, great body. And being able to exile any non-land card from your graveyard and recast it means that this card is going to have a ton of utility, whether it's getting a creature back, whether it's getting Collector's Cage back, whether it's getting Experimental Synthesizer, like removal spell. I think that like this card honestly screams to me as very strong. So I would be on the lookout for Jeskai colors going into Tarkir Dragonstorm. All right,
Definitely.
let's move on to Teval, Arbiter of Virtue. This is 2 black, green, blue for a 6/6 legendary spirit dragon with flying and lifelink. And this spell says, or this creature says, spells you cast have delve. And to remind you, each card you exile from your graveyard while casting spells pays for 1 generic of a delve spell's casting cost. So let's say you have you have 4 cards in your bin. You've got a 5 drop that costs 4 and a black. You can cast it for 1 mana by exiling 4 cards from your graveyard. Yes. And it also says whenever you cast a spell, you lose life equal to its mana value. Um, Pretty large downside, but this card has a really busted text box, honestly.
I'm just thinking of like all the ways you can offset that downside where you're like, okay, well, like, yeah, I lose life, but also when I cast a spell, I gain life, like those style effects, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're playing this in Commander, there's a bunch of ways to like just offset that immediately. In Standard, I look at this card and I'm like, well, what's the biggest, dumbest thing that we could throw into play? We'll talk about Ugin later. Crater Hoof is just barely peeking out at the bottom there. Like, there's so many. They reprinted Crater Hoof. Why'd they put it in Standard?
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Like this card screams break me.
Totally.
Like cards where I'm just like, what? Yeah, I'm speechless. Some of these cards, they just are so good that I really I don't know what to say. I think that 5 mana 6/6 flying lifelink, that's gonna be pretty good. And then you add the delve thing to it. The first thing that I thought when I saw this was Death Shadow. I was like, well, you just like play it in Death Shadow as your like stupid top end. Like even if you're at 20, you don't have to like pay a bunch of life the whole game. You just play Sultai Control, and then like as you play your control game, you like slowly lose life. You control exactly how much life you lose. And you like can play like medium larger threats because all your stuff is delve.
Yeah.
So
If
I
you
don't
can
know.
mitigate the life loss, this card's going to be very, very good. I will say I'm seeing a lot of like synergies in my head with cards that share one color with these dragons, but is a color off. So like Ketchermos is an example of a card that
Yeah.
seems like it combos pretty well with Tabal, where you cast 1 or 2 spells out of exile. All of a sudden your Ketchermos is online and you're attacking for 4 lifelink. That's pretty much a guaranteed hit, unless they're like Leyland Binding, Ride's End,
Yeah.
which to be fair, I guess that's a lot of what Domain has. But yeah, I like Taval a lot. I think it screams Commander busted and not necessarily Standard or Pioneer busted, but I could be wrong about that. If there's a way to offset the life gain, the life loss, it's just a insanely strong text box. So
It has the two most undervalued keywords, flying and lifelink, both like in combat. Like imagine if you lose 5 every turn, but you gain 6, right? Like
yeah,
on each attack. It
totally,
could be really good.
totally, yeah. All right, what does Nariv do?
Now this is a card that I'm really excited for. Nariv, I don't know how to say it. Nariv, Heart of the Storm, 4 mana, 4/5. It's a spirit dragon. Ta-da. If a creature you control that entered this turn will deal damage, it deals twice that much damage instead. Well, oh my god. It's so good. So basically, the way that I'm looking at this is if you have something that gives all your creatures haste, when you play this, you can attack immediately for 8. If you have a board that, like, let's say you have a creature that when it attacks, you make 2 other creatures, and then both of those creatures hit, then you also have this. That's an attack for, it's 7/14. This card just screams broken. Like, I'm thinking, so in standard, right, you can easily build around it. In older formats, it's like it's something that like is increasingly more broken. If you look at this card with like a uh what's the 6 mana enchantment where you put counters on it, then you make that many tokens? It's a commander card.
Like
It's like
Assemble the
the
Legion?
exactly assemble the legion, right? You like go back to like commander and you're like I'm gonna play cards that style. where you're like every turn they make more guys. I look at Urbrask's Forge with this card. I'm looking at like just
Urbrask
like a
Forge is
bunch
a
of
really good example. I'm thinking Screaming Nemesis, like,
there we go.
that
Screaming
card's
Nemesis is amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
kind of an
so
awkward,
like
like, sequence, but I think that yeah.
Sunspine Links.
Does that card have haste too? Oh my goodness.
No, but it just doubles it. Does it? It doesn't say combat damage.
Oh my
So
goodness, you're
it.
right. Yeah, Sunspine Rings does yeah, that's a really good play for sure.
So
Yeah,
like there's
I
a
like
bunch
Nariv for sure.
there's probably a bunch of different ways you could break this, and we're
Yeah.
gonna talk about a siege later that gives all your stuff haste and trample. So that's like you play that, then you play Narev. That's 10 in the air. I'm gonna stop talking about it. It's so good.
Another four color amalgamation that hopefully we can make work with the tools that they give us in this format. But yeah, I like Narivala. I think there's a ton of potential for him. 4 mana, 4/5 flyer is just a great body. It just kind of bricks a ton of dudes, and you know, not amazing in the monstrous rage format for blocking, obviously, but for attacking, like Jack said, if you can give it haste, if you can even just like having it in play and playing like a couple of hasty threats, like I think that it's going to be super super good. Um, yeah. So let's move on to Ureni, the song Unending. 5 green, blue, red for a 10/10. It's got flying, protection from white and from black. And when Ureni enters, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers your opponent controls. Your opponent's control, where X is the number of lands you control. So if you have 8 lands, you cast it for 8. It's an 8 mana 10/10. It flies. It can't be killed by white or black things. And it deals 8 damage divided as you choose among any creatures or planeswalkers. It's pretty good to me. I mean, it's like a board state buster that can't really be interacted with the traditional colors for removal spells. Blue, being in a format with this townie big enough does scream to me like maybe it's a little bit of an issue, but if you're able to like get it, wipe their board, and then they like this town ain't big enough, it might be a situation that's not good for them anyway. So yeah, I like Uruna. I think it's not going to be like a four of, but it might be like a one or two of in a fairly grindy decks, main deck or sideboard. So
I'm seeing all these dragons and I'm thinking like there's gonna be a dragon kindred deck where they play Cavern of Souls and they just play ramp spells and they're gonna try to get to Uranai as fast as possible and use it as their sweeper. Like just being able to like get it into play, kill all the aggressive creatures that have been kicking your butt the entire game, like go to combat with your two other dragons you've already played, just like round that corner very effectively, and then like there's really no way for them to kill it. White and black have like the unconditional removal. The only thing you have to worry about is blue bouncing it, um, or green paw patching it, like
right.
style like removal. Except for that, this card is pretty much untouchable, and it's gonna be like a 2 turn clock. It's gonna wipe their board and then be a 2 turn clock in the air, even if you've done nothing the entire game.
Totally. I totally agree. And I think the pop patch formation slash like bounce spell is definitely a good point because there is answers to this card. So don't think that like you putting it in your deck will make it unkillable. But I like these dragons a lot. I think that there's they're fairly exciting. They're kind of pushed. I don't particularly love the toughness matter stuff, but like that card draws cards if you just have like 3 toughness in play. So it's kind of giving you the question and the answer a little bit, which I think that type of archetype really, really needs, as opposed to you putting like, you know, enablers and payoffs in your deck. You kind of need to be able to do both. So yeah, I like these cards. Now we have the exciting bit of the additional cards in the set. So I think starting with Ugin makes sense.
Definitely. If you haven't seen Ugin, hold.
Yeah, Jack, what does
uh,
Ugin do?
so the new Ugin, if you're familiar with the 8 mana Ugin from Fate Reforged, this card is actually better than the 8 mana Ugin, and that's insane to say. 7 mana for 7 loyalty. When you cast this spell, exile up to one target permanent that's one or more colors. So on cast, even if it's countered, no matter what, Eldrazi style, Ugin's gonna nab the opponent's best thing, as long as it's got one or more colors. Then, it also has a static. Once it's in play, whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to one target permanent that's one or more colors. So this is whenever you cast an affinity spell. If it's free, you just get to exile their best thing. If you cast Moxin, if you cast Mishra's Bauble, if you do any of these free colorless things, you just immediately nabbed one of their things. Then you get to its actual abilities. You get to +2 to gain 3 life and draw cards. That helps you stabilize. It it puts a bunch of toughness on your Ugin, so if they attack into it, it still survives, and it immediately replaces itself. So that's a great +1.
Mm.
Its 0 is to add 3 mana. So you ramp, and it gives you fuel for the colorless spells that are going to be the removal that you use. So the 3 mana, the 0 is basically removal, and then you can -11, which is 2 upticks to search your library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, and then shuffle. And then for this turn, you just get to cast all of them.
Why not? Why not?
Well, we have doubling season.
Yeah, we do have doubling season in standard, and that would allow you to play the card, ult it, and keep it around, which is just unreasonable. I think this card
N-
is can be described with the word unreasonable, to be honest, and just kind of leave it there. But
I said unfathomable because the last one was called uneffable. So
yeah, I
it's
had
just
a
like my brain is so broken. It's like also if you have the doubling season line, you get to board wipe them because you just cast all the
yeah,
colorless cards that you have and you exile all their permanents and you have an Ugin. And if you have other like color, if you have another Ugin, hold up. With doubling season, you get another Ugin. Even though you've grabbed all your colorless cards, you can just like keep ulting your
yeah,
Ugins as a show of force.
double permanent exile with the Ugin play. Yeah,
Man.
this card's unreasonable. I think that it's not gonna really see a ton of play in Standard or Pioneer. It might, just because of how strong it is, but
Ramp.
I think in Modern it's gonna be very good. I actually misread this card. It's even better than when I read it the first time. I thought it only exiled permanents that were one color, like a monocolored permanent. No,
Mm,
it just blows up all the things. Like, it doesn't blow up
everything.
lands, which is, I guess, charitable for them. Oh, that's kind of you. You're leaving my lands alone.
Thank you.
I don't know. I see issues with this card, like,
Yeah.
genuine, legitimate issues where it almost feels like we're gonna be devolving into a consigned to memory, non-consigned to memory modern format where you're playing
On is
either
back.
you're playing like brute scale combo, Sam combo that kills people on turn 3, or you're playing Eldrazi and that's by far and away the best mid-range game plan, or you're playing 4 consigned to memories, like, potentially in your main deck to
That's
try
what decks
and
are doing
fix this. And yeah, and decks are already doing that, which is like
for breach.
that's all I gotta say. This card's unreasonable. I could keep talking about it, but I'm not gonna.
I will say, I will say that we can reanimate it in standard if we make it an artifact and then cast a Duretti. But I digress.
Yeah, and you can use the 4 mana, the thing that they put on omniscience to play
Enchantment.
with, right? The
Yeah, yeah,
restoration card,
you can do that too.
Abuelo's restoration or whatever. Yeah.
Wait, I think
Okay.
no, that's artifact or enchantment.
Oh, you're right. Non-aura enchantment. Totally. Okay. Let's move on. Let's touch on Elspeth
Ooh!
Stormslayer. So Elspeth, and it's kind of funny because it's like Ugin, Eye of the Storm, Elspeth Stormslayer. Is she slaying Ugin? Let's leave the flavor for Jack's deep dive in his shorts. I'm sure y'all will be looking forward to that. Elspeth is 3 white for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. It's got a static ability. It says if one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. You can +1 to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. You can 0 to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain flying until your next turn. Or you can -3 destroy target creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater. This card's insane. The 0 is gonna kill this. I anticipate this card being very frustrating to play against, specifically in limited, and it's probably gonna be a great finisher if a creature deck can get to 5 mana and we're not just, like, only playing Jeskai Convoke with, like, 19, 18 lands. Yeah, this card's Also, very good. I don't know if unreasonable is what I is how I would describe it, but it's very good. I think it's the power level that you need for a planeswalker to compete in this current standard metagame.
So there's two ways you could look at this card. One is you could say this is a Planeswalker doubling season, and instead of having the other line of text that it doesn't have, you just have the loyalty abilities, which is kind of insane. The other way you look at this is you say it's 4 mana for an anointed procession and 1 mana for these planeswalkers. This planeswalker. You like separate the two cards. You're like,
Mm,
okay, well, I'm 4 mana for anointed procession. Then what's the stat line on, that we paid for this planeswalker?
for 1
It is
mana.
one. It is 1 white for this. This card is insane. I'm gonna play this in goblins. I'm not joking. We're gonna play Boros goblins with this and Sheltered by Ghosts, and we're going to jump all of our tokens, uh and they're gonna all fly and get bigger. Like, why wouldn't you play this in goblins? You tap Crinkle, you make twice the number of tokens. Like, this card screams like play it in every deck. And what's insane is this card is probably going to be more powerful than Ugin, and Ugin is like the most busted planeswalker I've seen in a long time, and this card is going to be more played.
That's your okay, so that's gonna be your,
That's my hot take. That this
anticipation.
this will have more impact on standard and like maybe even Pioneer, not older formats, but in standard and Pioneer, I think Elspeth is going to be like the card out of this set that like changes a lot of things. Because think about it,
Yeah,
Domain gets to play this, Caretaker's Count gets to play this, Blue Eye Control gets to play this. Um, like you just jam it in any white deck, and it's a bomb.
totally. Okay, that makes sense for sure. I think it's seeing more play into its respective standard format, Pioneer format, is more likely, unless, of course, Ugin finds some sort of colorless deck that it thrives in, but Elspeth just seems like it's a board in a box, finisher, removal spell, combo wombo, and it just, like, does all the things, so, yeah, super excited for these 2 planeswalkers. I personally am more interested in seeing pushed planeswalker designs for now, just because historically speaking, we haven't really got like a ton of really busted planeswalkers that make waves. When you put them in the 4, 5, and 6 mana slot, it's a lot easier to push them and have them not be outrageously good, as opposed to like, I don't know, Teferi, Time Raveler. Like
Oh, go.
you want to stay away from those really pushed 1, 2, and 3 mana planeswalkers. I think like Chandra Torso Defiance is like a perfect example of a card that, like, if you printed it today, it would be a mid-tier planeswalker in standard, and it would see play, but, like, it would be the appropriate power level, so
Yeah, I agree. The threats are just so good nowadays. The planeswalkers have to be like really strong, otherwise they just die and they're like basically sorceries.
right. Alright, let's go to Tygem? Tygem? I'm so
Oh,
sorry if I misspelled or mispronounced it, but what is the Master Opportunist? It's, go ahead.
2 mana for a 2/2 with Flurry, which is whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you copy it, then exile a spell that you cast with 4 time counters on it. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. And then the copy of that spell resolves as if it's a permanent, it's a token. Now this is what I was thinking about earlier, is we really need to figure out this ruling whether or not those tokens that are created on the stack get doubled by Elspeth style effects, because what you could do is you could do some really crazy things where you're like that, like cast any spell, right? Like, and if it's a permanent, you double the tokens that you make off of it, because the permanent will resolve as a token, and if doubling season works well with it, you make two. If not, I think this spell is still really good. You like play this in a control deck, you like cast a cantrip, then you cast like a board wipe, or not a board wipe, but like removal spell
Mm,
with like upside, and then you copy it, still kill the thing, and then in 4 turns, let's say you're about to die, you get that other spell back for free later. I'm probably seeing this in like prowess with like burn spells, or like some kind of like Jeskai control deck where they have like a bunch of different kinds of permanents. They can either cast creatures or enchantments or instants. This card just seems insane. Also, just 2/2 body. Um, this card's like screams busted in older formats in like a humans deck, right? If you, or like maybe not in humans, but in a deck where you're able to go like double spell, you go like here's my noble hierarch, here's my Thalia's lieutenant. Then I also have one coming in the future. 4 turns is a lot, but I mean you're
Mhm.
getting it for free.
Yeah, and it's got 4 time counters on it, so, like, you cast a spell on turn 3. I think for me, like, what I like about this card the most is it just gets the wheels turning a lot, and so being, like, in a control deck, you can sequence it with with the cantrip first and then have 2 removal spells. You also have the flexibility to do the removal spell and then have 2 cantrips, and so, like, as long as you're able to live long enough to experience that card advantage come back, I think this card's gonna be good, and that's why I think immediately I'm thinking of it in, like, a more interactive game plan or interactive style deck where it's like, you're playing it in a kind of more aggressive style. It doesn't necessarily play into your strength, which is getting the game over quickly. Um, yeah, because like, if you suspend a card on turn 3, turn 4, it goes to 3, turn 5, it goes to 2, turn 6, it goes to 1. So turn 7 is the earliest that you'd be able to realistically, have your spell come off suspend, and that's just, like, not great if you're an aggressive deck, but if you're in the market for having the turns go, turn 14 to turn 20, um,
Yeah.
we're
Land
in
go,
the
land
market.
go, land go.
Yeah, we're in the market for that, but I think so maybe, like, blue-black is a more, realistic home for Taigem just because with blue-white, you're kind of playing into, like, the board wipe style, and this gets swept up in, like, split up, all the board wipes, temporary lockdown even. But in blue black, like you might be leveraging Taigem's body for like a Kaido combat damage trigger, or just like double copying your cut downs is a more realistic game plan game one. So I like
Yeah.
Taigem. I think he's just gets the gears turning, which I like.
Yeah, it's always nice to see a card that comes in and makes you think. And I think a lot of these cards are like that, where it's like these are build arounds, like kind of like Aether Drift also gave us those tools where it's like, hey, here's like Crypt Breaker Chariot.
Script
It's not
color.
broken right. Crypt Caller Chariot. It's
Yeah.
not broken right now, but you can try to break it. Here's Monument. It's not broken right now. Try to break it. Right. That's how I feel about this card.
Yeah, Monument to Endurance is a really good example because I watched Doomwake. Shout out to Doomwake. Uh, doing a Monument to Endurance little brew with, like, Guardian of New Benalia, which is just, like, a free discard outlet, and he was killing people out of nowhere, so cards that get the gears turning, cards that don't answer the question that they're asking is really what's gonna make an interesting standard format, so love to see it. Um,
Just real quick,
yeah,
Craterhoof Behemoth, top like
yes.
high level. We all know what it does. High level thoughts about it in standard. Go.
We have Elf and we have Archdruid, which is the first thing
Both
you
in
pointed out.
foundations.
Yeah. So first and foremost, you have an elf's payoff. You can just stay in the same color, no need to go into like white for Moonshaker Cavalry. Uh, I think it's a good addition to the format. What do you got?
I think that red's so fast, it's not really going to make that big of an impact now. But if dragons becomes a thing and a slow mid range deck becomes something, the elf deck might be able to be a thing. But we'll have to see how it shakes out. It's awesome to have this in standard. The last time we had this in standard was when we started playing Magic in Return to Ravnica.
There you go.
Uh, so
Ravinica. Back when we
back
would
when we
just
said it
always
like
say Ravinica. Hell yeah. It's honestly I like it more that way anyway. Really quickly, I would like to talk about the Sib Sig ceremony. Black, black, black for a legendary enchantment. It gives your creatures you cast cost a 2 mana reduction, so they cost 2 less to cast, which is great. What does it do? When a creature you control enters, if you cast it, you destroy that creature, then create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. Not great, but if you're able to like pair this with good ETB triggers or die triggers, this card may be worth it. Just keep in mind that like you might have to do some finagling to really see good play, but like I'm envisioning you being able to play like these understated, overcosted cards that come in. They either make your opponent discard or you draw cards or something of the sort, or even like a grave caller type of grave digger type effect that like is 4 mana usually, but it costs 2 mana and it gets a creature back. You can then just with the amount of mana that you have, if you have 2 grave diggers, loop them for the amount of mana that you can play. So it's like in a sense, I see this card being good, like, 2 Honest Rutsteins loop, together for
2 Mirror Retrievers go infinite.
there you go, 2 Mirror Retrievers go infinite.
Go infinite. Make
So,
infinite bodies.
yeah, so once the
So you have
wheels turn
2
a little bit.
you have wait, in Modern, you have 2 Mirror Retrievers. You play this on 3. Let's say you play it on 2 even.
Yeah.
You play Utopia Sprawl. You literally cast this Mirror Retriever, it dies, make a 2/2, Mirror Retriever, pick up your other Mirror Retriever, make a million 2/2s on turn 1 or sorry, on turn 2.
Yeah, off
You
Arbor
can
Elf even either, so, like, Overgrown
you
Tomb
well,
enables
I'm
this.
thinking like Modern Legacy. You can like Dark Ritual this, turn 1 this, make infinite 2/2s in Legacy. Like double Mirror Retriever seems like it might that I don't know. Like I like where your brain's going too. Like like think about it. If you have an anger in your graveyard,
Mm,
you make infinite 2/2s and you just kill them.
yeah.
They're not tapped.
No, no,
So
the safety valves on this card is very much not there, so, that they might come back to regret that fact, but, yeah, I like the Civ
that's
6 ceremony,
insane.
I think that it's, like, not necessarily amazing in standard unless you can really make that like, casting the triple black consistently enough, which will be a tough challenge, and then also having a consistent enough game plan, but, hey, 2 Honest Rutsteins plus an Insidious Roots, that's insanity, like, if you're able to do any amount of that, look out for the Civ 6 ceremony. Jericho Genesis is an Omniscience for dragon spells, it's a Rooftop Storm, it costs 8 mana, Rooftop Storm is 6 mana, Omniscience is 10 mana, it's right in the middle. Jack, how do you feel about 8 mana Draco Genesis?
So we have omniscience right now, but we also what's kind of cool about this is we have a blue ley line that makes all creatures in your deck a creature type of your choice. So you could just like play a combo deck that like has like some way of like cheating this into play, and then all of your combo pieces just become dragons. I think this is probably a meme or dream card in standard, amazing in commander, or dragon staple. It's an omniscience for dragons. Rooftop storm, 2 more mana. It's fitting.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's go ahead and move right along to the cards we wanted to talk about. So I'm going to do some scrolling. I'm so sorry for your eyes. Here's one right here. Why don't you just start with Frostcliff Siege?
So the sieges are back. They're enchantments that when you enter, that when they enter, you choose a mode, and then you get that mode for as long as they're in play. Jeskai, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Meh, it's not as good as Bind to Thassa. It's like basically balanced. It's balanced curiosity. However, the other side is what I'm excited about. Teamer, creatures you control get +1/+0, trample, and haste. Uh, You like make 2/1/1s. They both become 2/1s with trample and haste. Swing for 4 immediately. Kranko comes down by itself, taps, makes a 2/1 that attacks. Next turn you tap it, you make 4 or yeah, you make 2, you have 3, you attack for 6. Like this makes like the most basic cards that you could possibly play busted. And then you look at this with like the new dragons. The new 4 mana dragon that doubles damage for creatures that entered. If you go this into that, it's an attack for 10 in the air. Like it's just insane.
And that's just 2 cards. Like that onto into, play the 4/5, attack for 10. Yeah, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to really talk too much about this card, but I think you have the right idea. Like big dumb beaters. And then also, I think just segueing this card specifically, keeping it in your brain to the card that I wanted to reference, which is Voice of Victory. Where are you, Voice of Victory? Oh, where are you?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I cannot eat. I cannot sleep tonight. Uh,
There we
there's
go.
so many awesome cards in this set. Oh, yes.
So Voice of Victory is a 1 and a white 1/3 human bard. It's got mobilize too, so whenever it attacks, you create 2 tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature tokens. Notably, they are non-human tokens, and you sacrifice them at the beginning of your next end step. And then it says your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, so it shuts down instant speed removal, counter spells, really being efficient on their turn. So I like Voice of Victory a lot. Um, let's say you play the 3 mana enchantment, or even I'm thinking Defaced Gallery because it's a 2-drop, but that 3 mana, red blue enchantment we just talked about, and you choose Teamer, it gives your creatures +1/+0 trample and haste. You play this, your opponents can't cast spells, they have to make a decision, are they gonna counter it? If they can't do anything else. And then it comes in, you attack, and as long as you can have some sort of pump effect, this card is very good. It turns 3 damage, which 3 damage for 2 mana is not, anything super
Uh,
special, into 6 damage, which is a special amount of damage for a 2 drop. So, uh, I would say keep this one in your thoughts, um, when constructing like a Jeskai Convoke deck. They are tapped and attacking, so unless you're able to untap the tokens, they don't actually convoke. But maybe this helps enable some go wide strategy or supplements the already go wide strategy. So yeah, I like Voice of Victory.
Yeah, I think that card's really busted, especially if you play like, you know, Jeskai and you play that 3 mana enchantment, like you were saying, anything that buffs it is just dumb. Anything that's busted is dumb.
True. Uh, I'm just gonna talk about Rakshas's Bargain since we're here. This is 2 hybrid, 2 hybrid, 2 hybrid. So you could pay either 6 generic mana, or you can pay Sultai, or any combination of the three. And what does it do? You can look at the top 4 cards of your library. You put 2 of them into your hand, the rest into your bin, into the graveyard. I only want to talk about this card because it triggers Beanstalk. I see some potential issues with this card being ultra efficient card advantage that also triggers Beanstalk. So something to maybe potentially pay attention to and be
Yeah,
concerned about.
I think that people were saying that this card is probably really busted in like non-Sultai decks. Like you're gonna have access to it in Boros, for example, which isn't like the greatest, but it's like it's an option, and it's always cool to see cards that are flexible and give other colors card advantage.
Totally. Um, okay, what's the next card you want to talk about here?
I mean, Magmatic Hellkite is like all the way at the top, but this card is like really busted. One of the Krenko Buzz Crusher style cards that they put in sets now just to kind of like keep the 5 color, if you're not playing 5 colors, you're going to play a card like this. It's a 4 mana, 4/5 flyer. It's a dragon, of course. When this creature enters, you destroy a non basic land an opponent controls. Its controller searches the basic land card and puts it on the battlefield tapped with a stun counter on it. They then shuffle. So you make sure that they don't get the land back right away. They don't get access to the mana. A lot of these style effects put it on the battlefield tapped, but then they get to untap with it. If you hit their only white source and like they can tutor for planes, they just don't get to use their white source next turn, and you could potentially, kill them in that time. So this card seems really strong. Maybe sideboard playable.
Totally agree. Something to think about between Sunspline Lynx and Magmatic Hellkite. I think Sunspline Lynx helps play into the aggressive play style, whereas Magmatic Hellkite can help buy time, whether it be to push more damage through or if you're trying to accomplish a different goal. So I like Magmatic Hellkite. I think certainly a card on the same caliber initially in my thoughts that as Sunspine Lynx. So and it's a better body. I would prefer to have a 4 mana 4/5 flyer than a 4 mana 5/4 all day every day. The damage
Every
can't
time.
be prevented. The players can't gain life is a more relevant stat line, I think, ultimately. But we'll see. I think this text box potentially could be better for what we're trying to do. Like stalling them off of a Sunfall seems way more important in a deck that wants to go wide and just push another turn worth of damage through than pushing a non-lethal amount of damage through, if that makes sense. And it still plays into the Sunfall effect. So
And you were saying one of the things that you were saying when we talked earlier was how good it would be blowing up an everywhere land if they just have only domain with that one land. You just take it away and make them grab a basic, and all their cards go. Phew.
yeah, like imagine if they have somehow like an island, a forest, and like a underground mortuary, like the green black surveil land. And then they play Overlord of the Hauntwoods, they get an Everway land, they're playing towards Sunfall, which costs 3 white. You cast it and kill their Everywhere land. Yeah, they can get a plains, but you're canceling the ramp for a turn and you're totally screwing them off of Sunfall mana. So I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Winterlight Stories is right here. Just like to talk about this card. 2 and a blue sorcery. Draw 3 cards. Then discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card. And then it has Harmonize, which is a new mechanic here. For 4 and a blue, you can cast this card from your graveyard for its Harmonize cost, period. So it's like Flashback. But in addition, you may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by X, where X is its power. Then you exile the spell. So it's like Convoke, or yeah, it's like Convoke from your graveyard, except instead of tapping one creature for each one generic mana, you can tap only one creature, but its power is the number there in terms of how much it's reducing the generic mana cost. So if you have a four power creature, in play, um, you can tap it, pay 1 blue, exile the spell from your graveyard, and draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards unless you draw discard a creature card. I like that rate. I don't know if necessarily the 3 mana play is that amazing. It's kind of like a Champion of Wits type of deal. But I do like the harmonized cost. So yeah.
I think that looking at this card, it's like made for Hollow One and Modern. You play like Hollow One and Vengevine, and both those creatures can come into play for free. You like turn one Burning Inquiry this away. Like just like you're like, oh look, I discarded this. It's in the graveyard now. I have a Hollow One, or like my Vengevine comes back after I play my Blazing Root Walla. Either play, you then get if you just have one blue mana in the future, you just ancestral the discard you really don't care about because you're like, oops, I discarded a Blazing Root Walla. I discarded a Vengevine. It's like, oops, I don't know what happened, but I feel like they might just play this. Like, I think they might already play blue. I've seen a lot of Hollow One decks be like mono red.
Mm.
Uh, I know they splash like one color. Like the Vengevines, they don't ever cast, so they could easily play like Izzet and just play this as like a discard. You just play this as a discard, and then you have enough creatures to like, even if you're just casting it for 5 from the graveyard,
I like that a lot.
something.
I like harmonize in any sort of deck that cheats out dudes. So like if you're playing Afterburner Expert, you're putting those into play, you're making it 1 mana.
Yeah.
Hollow One, putting that into play makes it 1 mana. If you're dredging, even you put an Archamoeba and a prized amalgam into play. The prized amalgam is the only creature you can tap for harmonize, so it's like 2 mana then. But still, it like can help trigger your dredge and help like it's awkward a little bit because you're drawing first and then discarding. But I like Winterlight Stories, and I think that based on the harmonized cards we've seen so far, this is by far and away the best one. So I think it segues us nicely into Eshki Dragonclaw. If you want to read for us what this card does.
So Eshki is a 4 mana Teamer legend. It's 4/4 with Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 1. Beginning a combat on your turn, if you cast both a creature and a non-creature spell this turn, you draw a card and put 2 counters on this creature. So let's say that you've plotted what's the 2 mana aura that gives something menace and trample? It's like demonic something.
Demonic
Um,
Ruckus, I think it's got plot.
yeah. So like you plot Demonic Ruckus turn 1. When you play Eshki, you like immediately put Demonic Ruckus on it. It
Yeah.
becomes a 5/5 with Menace, Trample twice,
And then you
Vigilance, and
draw
Ward
it.
1,
Comes to
and you
7th.
immediately go to combat and make it a giant thing. So like there's plot the thing about like a lot of these like cast 2 spells in one or in one turn thing. I really think that plot is going to be like a way to break these cards because we have plot in standard right now.
Yeah.
You get that's a free way to have a second spell. Like you don't even need to like have 0 mana artifacts. You can just plot things and then you get to do it for free.
I really like that point. I wasn't even thinking about plot. So if there are good plot cards in the teamer colors that go with the strategy of like creatures and non-creatures, whether that be, hey, maybe you're just casting slick shot show off out of plot and then you're casting a non-creature spell, or maybe there's like a draw card type effect, or maybe it's just demonic ruckus. I think that that's very good. I was also thinking like, let's say you play Eshki on 4, and then on 5 you play a 4 power creature, or you already have a 4 power creature. Um, but you harmonize that for a power creature, and then that way you're able to like pay 1 mana, you draw those 3 cards, you discard a creature, you go to your turn, you draw another card, Eshki becomes a 6/6. I think as long as you're able to live the dream, this card really pays you off for it. And for that reason, I think that I am in for Eshki Dragonclaw and want to make it work. And it's a human, so it's like that I have um, extra skin in the game, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, like you can definitely do this. I'm like, are there humans with plot? I'm sure that there are. I'm sure that there are.
I don't think there's humans with plot. I think we would be more looking at
Outcaster Trailblazers plot. but that's not the
Ooh,
greatest.
that's a good no,
That's
that's actually a good point. Outcaster Trailblazer draws a card with Eshki, so, um,
ooh.
I don't mind that at all, actually. Yeah, let's move on. Awaken the Honored Dead here is Sultai colors, black, green, blue for a saga. Chapter 1, you destroy target non-land permanent. Chapter 2, you mill 3 cards. Chapter 3, you may discard a card. When you do, return target creature or land from your graveyard to your hand. I think this card's good. Removal
Oh,
spell, minor upside.
I think that I think that blue black bounce becomes sultai bounce, and they bounce this before they get to the last chapter.
Sure. Couple of these,
They're
yeah.
just they're just like, I'd like to bounce this back to my hand and then replay it. I'd like to bounce this back to my hand. I'd like to replay it. Like there's going to be a graveyard synergy if there's not one already. Like
Harmonize. It's
yeah,
like Winterlight
yeah.
Stories, and there you go.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah, I think
So I
Winter
feel
Night
like
Stories is going to be a good linchpin for these type of strategies. All right, what else do you
yeah, I
have on
just
your list here?
strategic betrayal and caustic exhale are two uncommon and common spells that I think are just going to shake up eternal formats. We can talk about the caustic exhale first, um, or that one.
Yes.
So that one, strategic betrayal, is or 2 mana for a sorcery. Target opponent exiles a creature they control and their graveyard. So we were just talking about how hard it's going to be to like kill that 10/10, right? But an edict takes care of it pretty nicely. It exiles as well, so they can't reanimate. And it's graveyard hate staple to it. There's been a lot of talk right now about how there's some very powerful graveyard decks. Blue White Omniscience won the last NRG 10K for standard. And this would just have graveyard hate in the main. I've heard people talking about playing this in like a bunch of decks going all the way back to modern, just as like a one or a two of you could play in the main as graveyard hate. And like decks sometimes play shield or is it Shieldred's Edict? Decks sometimes
Yeah.
play these things.
Yeah. Sheldred's
So
Edict.
I think this is like, even though it's a sorcery, being able to tag Oculus, being able to tag an Omniscience, hit the entire graveyard against Terror of the Peaks or what have you, it's going to be very strong. Someone said it hits in modern, it hits Murktide, it hits Oculus, it hits Nethergoyf. Like it just turns off certain decks completely, and it's just removal, worst case scenario.
Yeah, imagine if they had like a Ketramos in play and they're trying to be cheeky. Just like exile their Ketramos and all of their graveyard. Now, this could also be see play in Ketramos, drawing them a card because you're removing cards from the game. So I can see it being good in Ketramos as well. But yeah, this card seems very solid. Despite being a sorcery, I think this is probably the best um, edict typed effect just because of what it does. It exiles, and grabbing the graveyard is such a better effect than uh, you're probably giving it credit for in your brain, unless you are accurately representing the card in your head, which good job if you are. But yeah, no, the card's
Yeah.
very strong, absolutely, and it's a force to be reckoned with. But what does Caustic Exhale do? What is this one?
So this is basically your disfigure. You have it in every format now. It's one black mana minus two, except instead, now it's -3/-3. The added downside is you have to pay 1 extra mana or behold a dragon. Now behold is one of the returning mechanics. It was on Tarkir in like 2 cards. But in this set, it's reveal a dragon you control or point to a dragon. You point to a dragon you have, or you reveal a dragon from your hand, and that's the cost. And in these black based dragon decks, where like they have a bunch of huge top end threats and they need a way to get to that late game, I think this is going to be like the main way that they get there, right? How do they survive early against mice? How do they survive early against like these aggressive decks? Well, now they have a 1 mana instant speed -3/-3. It's not cut down. Cut down sometimes doesn't kill mice if they get bigger, if they get too big, right? Like this will always like, not
Mm.
always. Sometimes they can still get too big through counters. But I think this is going to be like a really efficient removal spell in this format. And this shows that they're trying to give the dragon deck legs. Because there's some really cheap interaction that usually is a sign that this is going to be a very grindy format.
Yeah, I like Caustic Exhale. I think it's exactly like you said, a good enabler for the dragons type synergies. Neg 3 is better than Cut Down in the fact that Cut Down can't specifically grab a 3/3. That's outside of the total power toughness 5 range. So specifically for 3/3s, 2/2s, and 1/1s, I think Caustic Exhale is a better card when you are um, when you're able to enable it. So as long as we see a black dragon deck, you don't really even need to be black based. If you could be like red based, that doesn't matter. You just behold the dragon, you're in good shape. I like Caustic Exhale
Yeah.
a lot. I think it's going to be very promising for sure.
What's your next one?
I have one more. I have Auroral Revival or Auroral Possession, which is this guy. So Auroral Procession is blue and a green and a blue for an instant. What does it do? It returns target card from your graveyard to your hand. And I'm really excited about this card because I like regrowth a lot. I think that you really can't go too much. You really can't get better than having access to your entire graveyard and being able to choose from whether it's card advantage, removal, big dumb beater, finisher. I think a royal possession is going to see a ton of play. I could be misguided in that fact, but the fact that it's a blue green instant really makes me feel like it's going to see a ton of play personally. So
I mean, it's you said regrowth, right?
mhm.
It's literally instant speed regrowth, so you can play your quote unquote control game. You can leave up your interaction, and if you need to, you just nab your best thing out of your graveyard. It doesn't say permanent. You can grab your board wipe. Like you can play this in band control. Like there's gonna be some really crazy stuff that you can do with this, and yeah, I mean like instant like commander staple. Card's just really, really cool overall. Reminds me a lot of how much better Growth Spiral was than Explore, is how much better a Rural Procession is than Regrowth.
Totally. Let's talk about Dragonbach Assault since we're here. 6 mana, ETBs, it deals 3 damage to each creature and planeswalker. Landfall, make a 4/4 dragon. Seems decent.
Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse are in the format right now, so you can just go like, okay, well, this is what I was talking about, where like this is going to be a very grindy format. They're making a lot of cards like the Teamer Dragon that wipes the board when it enters. This wipes the board when it enters. Like they're trying to like make it so that the dragons can slow down these other fast archetypes. And this is like the most pushed commander card I've ever seen. I'm
Yeah.
imagining like
Like
imagine if
Sandwich
you have like
Convention
an
doesn't have shit. Sandworm Convention Convergence doesn't have actual shit on Dragonback Assault.
well, actually, none of the dragons can attack, but yeah, that was a
Oh
thousand
yeah, that's
percent.
funny. Just kidding. Sandwich Convention way better.
So I was gonna mention the goat,
Yeah.
fucking the goat. No, but this card is literally insane. Like I'm imagining, like you're playing Teamer Ramp, you have a Crucible of Worlds and an Azusa in play, and you have a fetch land, and you're just like, you're just like, I'm gonna make six 4/4s a turn. Like that's like insane.
Yeah.
Super super cool card, and that was my last card. So that's a great way to wrap it up.
Yeah, totally. I think this is a great format so far. It's really exciting and kind of I can't stop thinking about Double Mirror Retriever now that we've talked about that. So I'm
I
really
I
excited.
literally sorry, I was looking at my phone. I tweeted that out, and people are already talking about that on Twitter. I just
Yeah.
tweeted that out. People are already talking. Can we go to the look at the basics real quick? I just want to like
Yes.
real quick look at those arts. It's just Cole was saying we have to talk about these at the end. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on the mocks? I know we already kind of talked about it, but while we
Yeah.
look at these lands,
My anticipation is Mox Jasper is not going to be good in standard. It might be good in the older formats, but I think that they're going to have a safety valve on the Jasper specifically by not printing uh too many, if any, aggressively costed dragons that are like 1, 2, or 3 mana. So yeah, just
if anything, we'll see it in like Lorwyn when we get Lorwyn next year.
yeah. Uh, my take is that these lands are beautiful and I love them.
I
Um,
agree.
so just let the record reflect that we feel good about Ron Spencer's art on these dragons.
I love you, Laurent Spencer.
I also think
These look amazing.
it's funny how like these eyeballs are slanted to the right, like going this way, and then the island is going the opposite direction. Think that that's kind of an interesting tidbit there. But yeah, these are
And
interesting lands.
I think it's because it's counter. It's counter to what the other ones are.
Yeah.
and it's blue, so it counters spells. I think it's like probably like some super like niche thing like that.
Totally.
But beautiful art overall. All these full art lands look amazing.
Yeah, totally. So I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for hanging out with us, Jack and Cole Podcast, episode 18. Jack, you want to plug yourself real quick? How can people find you?
Well, if you're watching this video, it's probably on the Goblin Ringleader channel. If you're not on the Goblin Ringleader channel, you're on the Cole. What's your channel called Cole?
I don't even remember. Whatever my YouTube
No,
channel is, or on Spotify
y-
if we
you're
ever figure out how to upload to Spotify.
you're either watching this on Spotify, in which case, thank you so much, you legend. And we're sorry that you didn't get to see any of these images. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. There's more to come. We do a stream every day, 10:30 to midnight, and then we also do 10 plus YouTube shorts a day. The grind never stops. We're going to 10K. We hit 1,000. Now the goal goes up to zero. We're going to 10K. We just hit 1,500 today, so big shout out to you for watching. It means the world to me to wake up to that number, and that's crazy. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And Cole, it's always fun to record with you. Do you want to shout yourself out? I know you got social media and stuff.
No, I will eventually have things to plug. Right now, my life is busy, so I'm not doing too much of the content creation stuff, but happy to support and be a part of the Goblin Ringleader channel as a whole. And yeah, so yeah, that's gonna do it for us. Make sure you're hydrating. If not, you're dehydrating. And until next time, we'll catch you later. Peace.
Peace.